Okay, Phil, so we're recording right now. So you were sick for a while and you got into carnivore diet. So tell us a little bit about that background and what happened. Yeah,
Yeah, well, thank you for having me on, Vincent. That's very
sure.
cool. And good to meet you. So,
Good to meet you as well.
yeah, well, it's a funny old history with me because for many years I was, 30 odd years I was plant-based. And I call plant-based anything, pretty much any diet, but I was mostly vegetarian. But occasionally I'd put, some chicken in or some fish or something. But I was never militant about it, but it's still plant-based. If you think about it, everyone's diet is plant-based. So everybody goes, meat is terribly unhealthy. But there's that
Yes.
old expression, don't blame the burger for the sins of the bun, because everybody who eats meat pretty much eats a load of plants with it as well. Even if they don't eat vegetables, they still eat a load of cereal and rice and pasta and all of that. And most of their diet is plant based. So, yeah, I ate that for, most of my life. When I was a kid, I ate, just like meat and two veg and stuff, which wasn't bad at all back then. I was born a long time ago in 1962. And back then, the
Yeah.
food was not as bad as it is now. It wasn't sprayed with all the glyphosate. It wasn't
Yeah.
disrupting our biome anyway, so much. So
More nutrients probably also in the soil.
more nutrients in the soil and a better gut integrity generally to
Yeah.
not be harmed by the plant toxins in things like broccoli that people think are healthy. But I believe that people stay healthy despite them, not because of them. So now, yeah, I've been carnivore about 10 years, but
That's quite something.
yeah, well, I get, there's people who've been carnivore longer than me. And look at the carnivore tribes. The Sami, the Maasai, the Inuit, they've been carnivore for millennia. So they're fine.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with them until the
Yes.
Western foods come in, and then they get just as sick as the rest of us.
Yeah, they get obese and
Yeah,
stuff. Yeah.
absolutely. But for me, it was more the sort of spiritual side of things. I was really into being a bit of a yogi and doing lots of meditation and things like that. And then when you get sucked into that, very often you get sucked into a plant-based lifestyle. They say, well, you're never going to get enlightened unless you go plant-based. If you eat meat, it's gross. All this sort of thing. And so I got stuck in that for a long time, and I really studied it, and I thought I was an expert. I wrote my first book in, I don't know, 1995, something like that. And it was about on Ayurveda, really, but mostly about plant-based foods and which foods aggravate the different doshas, Vata, Pitta, and Kapha in Ayurveda, and how to offset one against the other. And it was basically just polypharmacy. I didn't realize how overcomplicated it all was. And I didn't really look at the old texts of Ayurveda that say that meat is the most nourishing food for the body, like Amrit, like nectar. And so I didn't look at that. And most people who look into Ayurveda don't realize that they say that as well. It's been in every culture in human history, buried under all the propaganda that the elites give us that we should eat plant-based foods to keep.
Yeah, they want to get rid of meat.
Yep, they want to keep us weak and controllable. They always have. And yet they load of meat themselves.
Yeah, they probably have huge feasts in their
They
palaces.
do. Absolutely. Yeah, they always have. They always have.
Yeah, they are hypocritical.
Totally, totally. And we've got a book out called The Red Pill Food Revolution. You can see the history of that's on Amazon, but you can see the history of how this has happened over the centuries, really. But anyway, my story. So I went plant-based sort of about 1980 probably. And it was okay to start with, but back then it was all the macrobiotic craze, all this brown rice and lentils and that kind of thing.
Yummy.
Yeah, it ruins your guts and you fart all the time. But this is healthy, you think. Anyway, it took a while until I started to get sort of various niggles like bad back and inflamed sacroiliac joints. I thought, well, this is probably from just sitting in lotus position too much every day. And no, it wasn't. It was because there was inflammation starting, and it was slow to build up. It's a slow poison, vegetarianism. Veganism is a bit of a faster poison, but vegetarianism, you can toddle along for a while with a bit of dairy and eggs in your diet, along with all the farty vegetables and rice. But I did that for a long time, and then at the end of the 90s, I owned and ran a gym, and so I was training very hard, and my body definitely wanted more protein, so I started introducing chicken, that kind of thing. But I didn't really know how to eat. I was doing the old bodybuilding diet of loads of eggs and chicken with rice and broccoli, that kind of thing. But it wasn't really working. I got big, but I never got really, really lean, however much exercise I did. And also my joints were getting worse and worse. There was periods of inflammation where I couldn't train. I didn't really figure it out. And then after a long travel in India, I came back, sold the gym, and in the 2000s, I just forgot about everything really and ate rubbish. Well, I wasn't even trying to be healthy with my veggie curries mostly. I was eating, bowls of cornflakes and milk and cheese on toast and all of that kind of stuff. And by 2010, I was getting to be a bit of a fat bastard. And I remember going on this holiday to Thailand, this fishing holiday, and it was a friend of mine's lake out in Thailand, and he has monstrous fish. You're like 300-kilo fish
That's
really
gigantic.
monstrous, and
Gigantic.
sort of lots of them 50-kilo plus, and you're fighting them all day. And my back was so bad, I was taking ibuprofen constantly to stop it hurting.
Yes.
And then I came back, and when I came back, and I look at the pictures actually, because I went there in 2010 and again in 2012, and I'm half the size in 2012. In 2010, when I went there, I was really pretty fat with sort of 4-foot long dreadlocks. And I looked totally different to what I do nowadays. And when I came back, one ankle just blew up, really inflamed. And I thought it was an old injury where I fell off a climbing wall once. But then the other ankle did it. Then the left knee, then it just went through my whole body and I was completely crippled. And it was really full on, really severe psoriatic arthritis. And my first idea was to go vegan because I was vegetarian-ish. And I thought, well, to be more healthy, I've got to go even more plant-based.
Make it even
Yeah,
worse.
well, actually, yeah, pretty much. I learned afterwards. And so I went vegan and then raw vegan and then fruitarian. And this was only over a few months, but I was doing like spinach smoothies every day with almonds and turmeric and all of that sort of thing in, horrible things. And
Yummy, yummy.
yeah, and all that did was make me emaciated. I lost all the muscle, ended up pretty skinny with a bit of a belly, and
Yeah.
had kidney stones from all the spinach because it's all full of oxalates. So that didn't really work.
Yeah, I follow someone on Instagram. He's a personal development coach. He's very much into spiritual sector. And he used to be vegetarian or vegan, I'm not sure, for a while. And at that time, he was like, he didn't eat any meat. He was very lean and felt very weak.
Yeah. Oh God, yeah. It was completely the wrong move. But then around 2011, maybe beginning of 2012, I really discovered that we should be eating meat. And so I ended up going keto, which, lots of fatty meat, but still with dairy and still with some vegetables, a few like healthy green low carb vegetables that I thought were essential. And then I did get a lot better. And then I went more strict. And
How long did it take?
well, with that
Get better?
kind of diet, and also I was taking low dose naltrexone, which is probably the only really safe drug for autoimmunity, and it doesn't really do any harm, not like the ones they try and push. It's only cheap, so they don't prescribe it. I did take their drugs only for about a month, though. I took some sulfasalazine, and it was awful. It just gave me flashbacks to my old acid tripping days, and so I was completely and utterly spaced out, and my fingers turned yellow. So it was obviously messing my liver around and causing some
Yes.
imbalance in sort of
Detoxification.
bilirubin and whatever. But a little bit of liver damage going on, I think, already. But it was protesting. But anyway, my liver was already in a state. I had fatty liver, I had cysts on the liver, all kinds of things. But then I went on to the meat thing and did a lot of cold thermogenesis, lost the last of the fat, and I ended up really ripped. But I was only about 120 pounds, about 60 kilos or less. And so it didn't look that great at that weight. And I thought, I've been wanting all my life to get really, really lean. And finally I do it when I look really crap anyway. But it was with no exercise and eating about 4,000 calories a day. Not that calories actually matter. It's only a measurement of heat, and that's another myth that we could get into. But I realized that lying on the sofa, 50 years old, 2010, I was really lean. And so I thought everything I've been told about exercise and losing fat is wrong as well. And then anyway, I got quite a lot better by about 2013, 2014. And I ended up writing that book, Arthritis, the Best Thing That Ever Happened to Me, which went to be a Kindle bestseller. and it still sells a load. I think it's the clickbaity title, but it's true. You know, a lot of people who get very sick, it's the way that they find their way into learning all of this stuff, isn't it? And the gift it gives you to know really about all the myths about diet and lifestyle. And so it really was. In that book, I go through the battles with the medical system, and then discovering how to actually fix it, and then the whole spiritual side of it in the third part of the book. But it wasn't until I came off the low dose naltrexone. I thought I only tried it out to see, how I could help clients, because I always wanted to do consults, and, I want to try everything to get all the information, experimenting on myself. And then at about 2015, I came off that, and it was obvious that I couldn't take the veg anymore, and I couldn't take the bowls of heavy cream and berries that I was eating. So then I went fully carnivore. I found out that I just felt better on the days I didn't cook the veg. And so 2015, I went carnivore, and that was it. And it was sort of meat and butter and a little bit of cheese. But then probably 4 years later, when my partner was diagnosed with Graves' disease, and we were consulting with Zofia Clements, a paleomediciner in Hungary, and she said, not even a molecule of dairy for autoimmunity, nothing.
Why do you think is dairy so bad?
I'll come into that in a sec. Yeah.
Sure.
And I gave it up. It wasn't really affecting my joints. I felt fine. But as soon as I gave it up, my abs came out again and my sinus issues cleared up. And I thought even in Ayurveda, dairy causes sort of mucus production. So I thought that makes sense. But I didn't realize that it was doing me any harm, really. But the problem with dairy, I think, is I've got on my YouTube channel, I've got a couple of interviews, one very little short one outside with Zofia Clements from Paleomedicina in Hungary, and one full podcast episode. So go check them out if you want to look into the dairy thing, if anybody's watching this, but sure, in detail. But they're amazing at Paleomedicina. They're reversing stuff like glioblastomas, never mind all the autoimmunity and other cancers, but serious brain tumors and stuff on very high fat ruminant animal meat only. So, beef, lamb, that's it really. And that is really the sort of purest form of it, and the only food that gives us everything we need and nothing we don't, which a lot of people might argue with or think is outrageous when I first say it, but it is actually true. And they put dairy up as high on the list of baddie foods as grains and seed oils. They say that dairy, what it does, I mean, if you look in nature, to me, I think, how do you tell whether somebody's talking sense or whether they're not? Because there's so much misinformation about diet out there, isn't there? So I just relate it back to nature. You look in nature, which animal consumes dairy after it's weaned? None of them. Absolutely none. Yeah. So there's probably a reason for that. So what happens in dairy, there's a lot of growth factors. So that's designed to make a small animal into a large animal to grow as fast as possible. But when you're already an adult animal, then those growth factors don't work in the same way. They work to create unusual cell replication. And for that, read autoimmunity, cancer, whatever. So quite often then people will have pasteurized dairy and they get a reaction to it. So they go, oh, I'm lactose intolerant. But the pasteurization process gets rid of the lactase. So then that enzyme makes people less able to digest the lactose. So they get a reaction initially. So when they have raw milk or raw dairy, then they find they don't have that problem. So they go, oh, this is wonderful. And they get very healthy and everything goes very well on raw dairy, although it's a bit more difficult to lose body fat when you're consuming dairy. So everybody says, oh, yes, raw milk is fine. Raw dairy is great. Yes, but in comparison to what? Probably the old diet that they were on of seed oils and grains and processed foods. But if you compare a diet with a load of dairy in to a pure carnivore diet, there is really no comparison. So then you've got the raw dairy. They're not noticing any initial reaction to the dairy, but also it has more growth factors than pasteurized dairy. So the growth factor problem that down the line could cause unusual cell replication is stronger. So people attack me for this. They go, you're mad to say that raw dairy is bad. Why would you believe anything that this woman says? And I'm like, look, she's one of the greatest experts in the world with the best results. Why would I argue? And now, having done, a good 10 years of consults with people with autoimmunity, I see the problems when people come to me and they say, I'm doing a carnivore diet and my arthritis got a little bit better, but it's not really gone yet. What can I do? it's generally down to one of four things, or two or three of four things, and that's pork, chicken, dairy, and eggs. And they can cause problems when somebody is already autoimmune. So the problem with chicken and pork is that chickens and pigs are not really fed what they're supposed to eat. They're given a load of corn, even if it's organic. They're giving them corn and soy and that kind of thing, and they're not really adapted to it. So the fats become quite high in omega-6, quite high in deuterium as well, and that can cause inflammation, particularly while the gut's already leaky. Pork is a damn good food if it's eaten if the pigs have eaten what they're supposed to eat. Chicken is okay. It's not really that nutritious, but it's fine as long as the chickens have eaten like worms and bugs and mice and things like that.
Proper food.
Yeah, they're not
proper upbringing, proper environment.
Yeah, they're not supposed to eat corn all the time.
No.
So
yeah, that's inflammatory anyway.
Yeah.
So then the porks are inflamed anyways, bad omega-6, omega-3, bad protein structure.
Yeah. And the chickens just end up basically as walking corn, I think. Yeah. So, that's why, not everybody needs to go this strict. There's no militancy among carnivores. People go, well, you've gone from one extreme to another, veganism to carnivore. I don't think they're extremes. Carnivore is just basic. Veganism's extreme. There's never been a vegan culture. We're not designed to eat plants except in starvation mode, because we're actually facultative carnivores as a species. We do best on just meat, but we're okay on seasonal plants. But those plants would have been berries, nuts, the odd tuber, and nothing in the north, nothing in the winter, nothing in the ice ages. So we're absolutely fine on just meat. And none of the plants that we did eat back then were any of the ones that we find in the shops these days. Broccoli didn't exist. Kale and spinach didn't exist, and the tribes, they don't eat stalks and leaves. They know how poisonous they are. There's an enormous amount of plant toxins in what's called superfoods these days, all the leafy green veg. They're very poisonous. There's a wonderful video. If anybody doubts that, there's a wonderful video called Plants Are Trying to Kill Me. Plants are trying to kill us. Trying to kill you. That's it. And it's Anthony Chaffee, American neurosurgeon working in Australia now. He's a good friend of mine. And that video is absolutely brilliant. Watch that, but when you see that there's 136 known carcinogens in an organic Brussels sprout and probably 60 in the least toxic veg, you get a little bit of a different view of healthy vegetables. It's not all.
That sounds terrifying to me.
I know. It's not all about the carbs. People go, oh, just drop the carbs and you're okay. And people get obsessed with carbohydrates. I don't think that's a problem. The tribes, they go out and gorge on honey now and again. They're all right. If it's pure carbs without all the plant toxins, it's not really a big deal. But it's the plant toxins and all the fibers ruining the gut and then making it leaky and allowing the proteins to get through into the bloodstream that cause the inflammation that leads to what we call autoimmunity, except there really is no such thing as autoimmunity. And this is what I like to get across to people. When we did our Spanish conference recently, the Carnivore conference last October, Anthony Chaffee was there and Sophia was there as well, and lots of great people. And part of my talk was that I don't think there's any such thing as autoimmunity. The rheumatologists and doctors and whatever, they say your body has started attacking itself. We don't know why you need this drug. This is nonsense. Our bodies don't attack themselves. They don't do it. There's always a reason for it. And so then the other theory is this molecular mimicry. So they say, right, these proteins get through into the bloodstream through a leaky gut, undigested. And so the body attacks them to get rid of them. But in some of the structures, the molecular structures in different tissues in the body, like the synovial membranes in the joints, the thyroid, whatever autoimmunity can attack, are quite similar to those proteins. And so the body gets confused and attacks the tissues. Again, that never rang true to me. I mean, it's better than the rheumatologist theory. But the thing is, when Anthony did his talk, he pointed out something really interesting, that when the gut's healed, and those proteins are no longer getting through, the body still has antibodies against those proteins, but there are no symptoms. If it was autoimmunity, those antibodies would still be attacking the tissues because they're still there. But the body doesn't get confused. It's not that stupid. Nature is incredible, miraculous, and it doesn't work against us. So I don't believe there is such a thing as autoimmunity. I believe, as Natasha Campbell-McBride says, that there are toxins in certain parts of the body, and the body causes inflammation to get rid of those toxins. There is no such thing as bad inflammation. That's not what somebody with screaming rheumatoid arthritis wants to hear. But it's because they're continually piling the toxins in, and the body needs to inflame to get rid of them. Once you've healed the gut and the last of the toxins are cleared, the symptoms die down. And that's it. And then some people can reintroduce a few not so inflammatory foods like eggs, chicken, pork, dairy a little bit if you want to risk it, and some seasonal nuts, berries, seasonal fruit or whatever. Vegetables are best avoided completely, and grains and seed oils and processed foods. But some people can reintroduce them and some people can't. I find it much better without them. And so I'm pretty much, 95% anyway, beef, lamb, salt, and water. And a few organ meats, a little bit of fish, very high fat. And that's what heals the gut and keeps it healed. Occasionally I'll have some pork and chicken now, but I learned my lesson in 2022 when not only did I get another kidney stone, and I thought that's weird because I haven't eaten any food with oxalates for like 8 years. And I was speaking to Sally Norton on my podcast, who wrote Toxic Superfoods, and I asked her, but I got this kidney stone out of the blue. And she said it can take decades to dump the oxalates. These plant toxins get really, especially oxalates, get really embedded deep into the tissues. These sort of like little shards of glass, the oxalic acid crystals, and it can take a long time for the body to get rid of them. They kind of dump them in waves. So I got another kidney stone in 2022. And that winter, because I've been traveling, I'm a musician, I'm a drummer, and I play, around the festivals. And I was traveling a bit. I was eating a load of pork, chicken, dairy, and eggs. I thought, I'm 8 years in, I'll be immune to that. It'll be fine. It was fine for a couple of months, 3 months maybe, eating too much of that, because it's difficult to find really good fatty beef and lamb on the road. But you can always find pork, chicken, dairy, and eggs somewhere. People eat that all the time. So I thought that'd be okay. And I really pushed it and pushed it. It was okay. But then that winter, I was actually sicker than I was in 2010. It was absolute suicidal pain set in. The joints just blew up. I lost 45 pounds again that I didn't need to lose. Couldn't get off the sofa. But I had total confidence this time. I knew what had happened, and I got total confidence this time. And so it took me about 3 months to get out of it, whereas it took me about 3 years before. And then, gradually putting back on the weight. And it was a real wake up call. And I remember going on Anthony's podcast and talking about it, and people were saying, you just look too skinny now. You look terrible. You can't even go online. And I'm going, no, you got to be honest. I'm supposed to be this carnivore influencer. If I make a mistake, I want to warn other people too. And so I went on Anthony's channel and talked about it. And people can probably find that and see me looking ridiculously skinny. But yeah, it happens. You always have to watch out. If you've been autoimmune, because you already have those antibodies in there, you have to be careful. You have to keep that gut in really good order. Otherwise, it can happen again. And then people go, oh, well, you're not cured, are you? Well, why would you want to go back to eating pizza and pasta and donuts all the time if that's what destroyed you in the first place? Once you are healed, there is a bit of latitude now and again. But if you think about our ancestors, when they did eat those, they had really good gut integrity for a start. But when they did eat that stuff, any plant foods, it was only seasonal anyway. So people eat them year round now. A few berries in the autumn, in the sun, which depletes the deuterium from the berries, all of that kind of thing. Perfect. Nature knows what to do. We were absolutely fine. But now if we eat that stuff all day long, every day, which people do, things are going to go wrong completely. So it's just going completely against nature. So yeah, you have to kind of watch out. And are you cured? Well, I'd say if we stop calling it the carnivore diet and call it our species-specific human diet, if we go back to that, it's no wonder we feel better again, right?
Yes. So you said also in one of your videos on Instagram that a high-fat meat diet is important. Why is the fat so important to consume to gain the beneficial effects of a carnivore diet?
Well, we're not obligate carnivores like a cat or a lion. We can't produce very much energy from just protein. So you can see when people end up stuck in the wild and they just eat rabbit, which is very low fat, and they call it rabbit starvation. Because eventually, when they burned up their own body fat stores, they have no energy left and they just kind of waste away. So it's not about the meat, it's about the fat. Well, when you cut the carbohydrates from the diet, you need energy. And it's either carbohydrates or fats. That's the first thing, that it's to do with energy. And when you run on ketones, from being adapted to fat burning, the energy is much more stable through the day. It's kind of like a log on the fire, whereas carbohydrates are like a newspaper. You throw one on, it burns. You throw one on, it burns. But you put a log on, it burns steadily. And that's the energy you get when you run on fats. It's great. Like I'm 63 and, I go out and I can play sort of long gigs in the evening on the drums, real energetic with a band with people half my age. And then at the end, you see they're going, oh, we're hungry, need a pizza or something. I'm going, I could do the gig again. I'm fine. And then you think, oh, I haven't even eaten today. But the energy is really stable. And that's the first part of it. But the second part is that when you're healing the gut, you need especially high fat, literally a third fat to 2/3 lean meat by sight on the plate. That's the kind of paleomedicina ratio, ideal ratio for reversing these awful conditions. And that's because even when the gut's even when the gut's leaky, still, even if you're eating just beef and lamb, the proteins from that can get through and cause some inflammation. They won't be harming the gut and the gut will be healing up, but a lot of the nutrients you need are in the fats. And so, these sort of fats and the bone broths that the GAPS diet recommends, that kind of thing, with all these really beautiful nutrients for healing up the gut without causing it any irritation. And that's why it's very high fat. So it's for the energy and also for the gut healing, to give the right nutrients for the gut healing and not to be eating too high protein. People think carnivore diet is a high protein diet. It's not necessarily. Some people like Anthony and Sean Baker probably eat pretty high protein. They're big guys. They train a lot. That's great. And if your body wants that, there's nothing wrong with that. If the gut's good, nothing wrong with that. But when you're healing up, you don't really want to be having too much food. You also want the maximum nutrients in the minimum amount of bulk of food. And so that's
Nutrient dense food.
nutrient dense. And that's why they also recommend organ meats. You can really overdo organ meats. Some people have done it. Some carnivore influencers have done it as well. They've overdone the organ meats and got hypervitaminosis and, not mentioning any names, but they end up eating a load of fruit to block the uptake. But then if you eat the organs, just a little bit, like you might need maybe a pound of liver a week or something like that. That's your vitamin pill. So high in nutrients. And that also gives the body a load of nutrients without too much bulk. And this is great in the healing phase. So that's really why you go onto a very high fat diet, particularly with autoimmunity. With autoimmunity, it's essential. If anybody is here listening to this with autoimmunity, please get the confidence to do this, because it might not be forever, but you might love it as much as I do and go on 10 years with it. But you get used to it and it's great. There's a lot of different things you can do with cows and sheep, right? And you can get some great different meals with it. Please don't doubt it, because the years I wasted, I could have been in absolute perfect shape now if I'd have known this at the beginning in 2010. But okay, I got it out of 30 joints with no damage, but I've got a completely destroyed left knee and right wrist. And I could have got away with that if I'd have understood how to calm that inflammation down sooner. So please, have the confidence. It will get you out of it. It won't be immediate. If you eat that way for a week and go, I'm not healed, it took decades to get into this mess. It's going to take a while. There isn't anything a rheumatologist can give you that is going to cure that. No rheumatologist has ever cured any autoimmune condition. Not ever. They just end up giving you these drugs that sometimes work, usually don't, and they end up blowing up your liver as well, detaching your retina, doing all sorts of terrible things to your pathways in the body. But if you do this real basic carnivore diet, that what paleomedicina would call the Paleolithic ketogenic diet, PKD diet. It's like lion diet, they're calling it now, but very high fat and adding organs as well. And you will heal. I often use the analogy that if you turn the engines off on a ship, it doesn't stop immediately, right? But the engines are off, but it takes a while to sort of roll to or coast to a halt. And that's exactly the same with healing. If you have confidence with it, which I didn't in 2010, so I messed about with this vegetable, maybe I need some turmeric, maybe I need to do this, maybe that, it's all nonsense. It really is that simple. And so in 2022, when I had to fix it again, took about 3 months because I knew what to do. And there will be periods of inflammation and they'll go up and down as the body clears the toxins, as the gut heals. It won't die down immediately. But if you take anything else apart from that, including supplements, which are all rubbish, except the very few which you can take in specific quantities, in pure forms of it at certain times down the line, maybe. But while you're healing the gut, no supplements. They've got corn in them, fillers, all kinds that keep the gut leaky. They're full of deuterium. They're packaged in ways together with different vitamins and whatever that work against each other that wouldn't be found in nature. They're not in a bioavailable form. They're not in the natural form. So, people say, oh, I need to take this supplement because that's healthy. I think it's just a step down from the pharmaceutical industry. I think it also catches people. And we all end up with cupboards full of this rubbish. And then eventually you realize when you go carnivore that you don't need these supplements. You end up looking in the cupboard, you've got all these out of date supplements and that you bought like 5 years ago, 10 years ago. It's just rubbish. And you took 2 or 3 of them and then another one caught your eye. Oh, this is the miracle cure for arthritis. This is a miracle cure for this, that, the other. There is no miracle cure. The miracle cure is the body's healing systems. And all you need to do is get out of the way. That's why I call my course. I've got an online 30 video course for autoimmunity called the subtraction method, which is all about taking people through how to get rid of all the effects. It's not just diet. It's the EMFs, it's the artificial light, it's not having enough sun exposure, it's the stresses, how to get rid of them, even the spiritual side of things. It all ties in.
Yeah, sure.
But on a diet level, it's taking away the things. It's not adding things. Supplements won't do you any good. They won't. Taking everything out apart from the most basic food that has everything we need and nothing we don't. No toxins, nothing. But everybody says, what about all the hormones and antibiotics these animals are pumped full of? They call them pumped full of. It's kind of a vegan expression there, Well, they're pumped full. Well, they're not really. I agree with vegans on 2 things. Dairy's rubbish and factory farming is horrendous. So, okay, we agree on that. Yeah, let's get all the animals back on the land. Let's get rid of all the crops that are making you sick, vegans, and destroying all the land and killing billions of wild animals for your diet, which isn't compassionate. Let's get rid of all of them, get the animals back on the land, regenerate the soil, and then we've got real healthy animals that don't get injected with antibiotics or hormones.
Yeah, exactly.
However, the animals that are injected at present with hormones and antibiotics are not injected with as many as we're led to believe. There are guidelines on that. Plus, they have livers, which filter out a lot of these things. So even if you get what you might consider the poorest quality meat, it's still way better than the best quality veg. Because we're not adapted to plants. We can't digest cellulose. We can't access the nutrients that are in those plants. And we get a load of toxins from them. If we have... I've seen great healing with people eating nothing but McDonald's burger patties. I don't recommend that, but people do it and they heal because it's so much better than their plant-based diet. And people go, oh, McDonald's is disgusting. And it is pretty disgusting. But if you've got a tray, right, you got your tray of McDonald's crap, you sit down to eat it. What do you got? You got the bun, you've got some horrible chemical sauce, and you've got the fries, which is the glycoalkaloid toxins in the potatoes, plus a load of chemicals, and it's all done in seed oils.
Exactly.
And then you've got your jumbo Coca-Cola. Why is it that everybody blames the burger patty in the middle of the bun for all the diseases that people get from eating McDonald's?
That sounds pretty retarded to me.
It does, doesn't it?
I mean, it might be involved, but I think there are other components that are more involved into the onset of sickness.
Totally. And so, people say, there are these studies that say that meat causes cancer and meat causes heart disease. It doesn't.
Yeah, of course.
Now,
I don't believe that all cholesterol is bad for you. It gives you heart disease. Well, you need cholesterol. Otherwise, you will get dementia when you're 75.
Or way younger than that. I mean, I started to get it on a vegan diet. When you're on a vegan diet and your brain's not nourished, you get proper brain fog. You walk into rooms, you don't know why you've gone in there. You walk somewhere down the street and then you forget your way back. And, it happened to me so many times and the brain is just not nourished. And that's what happens on veganism. It's one of the first things that can happen and people don't realize it. And they also, it does lead to mental illness. And people say, you can't say that about vegans. Well, why not? Because, if somebody says to me, well, your knee's ruined, what am I going to say? That's very offensive. I'm going to go, no, you're absolutely right. And it happened because I ate a ton of plants and got a load of inflammation. So you say to a vegan, you've got some mental illness, particularly the ones that will send me death threats on my YouTube channel or these crazy things they do, like hold funerals for frozen chickens in supermarkets and, all these weird things that happen in the vegan brain. But it's offensive to say so because you can't call out mental illness. But when we see, I have a carnivore group of about 20,000 on Facebook, and
Wow.
a lot of us were ex-vegans, and you can see a lot of them saying, isn't it amazing how I look back and I think, how was I so emotional? How was I so aggressive, so militant, so depressed, such brain fog? I can't imagine it. I
Yeah.
feel so chilled now. I feel so calm.
Yeah.
And that's what happens. So vegans, I'm not being nasty to you at all, because, you know, a lot of my time is spent doing consults with people who have ruined themselves through veganism. And I have a lot of compassion. I used to be a vegan. Of course, vegans say, well, you were never vegan then if you ever gave up. Vegans never give up. Yes, you do. When your health fails, you know, there's so many, even very sort of well-known vegan influencers of 100,000 plus followers on YouTube. They've then gone, oh, this is my video of why I'm no longer vegan. And that was their livelihood. You know, the health is failing all the time. So yeah, and there's people going, well, I've been vegan for 6 years and I'm really healthy. Great. It's the honeymoon period. It usually doesn't last that long. You probably have very good redox potential to get rid of the plant toxins. You're very, very good. You've got a very efficient body, but it's not ideal. And your diet is not compassionate. So, you know, I am more vegan now than I ever was as a vegan. So I eat grass-fed beef and lamb. That kills 1 to 2 animals a year for me and my family. When I was vegan, millions of animals
But
get killed but for the crop. So I'm vegan. I'm perfectly vegan now.
yeah, I understand your point. Do you still love meat after all the time?
God, yeah, that's food. That's like asking a lion.
Yeah, that's food. That's right. Yeah.
It's like asking a lion if it likes antelope.
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
no, but I mean, my favorite food probably in my whole life has been macaroni cheese. My mum used to make it when I was a kid. And if I think about it, I think, yeah, I could probably eat a bucket full of that because I remember how nice it was, but it never bothers me. I don't go day to day thinking, oh my God, I wish this steak was macaroni cheese. You lose the addictions of that. The thing is, here's the thing. People say, oh, I could never live without this food or that food. This is the evil that's happened recently. We have started combining fats and carbohydrates in our food, and this creates addiction. It bypasses the leptin signaling. We don't know when we're full. If you think about any food that is really addictive that you can eat until you're stuffed throat to anus, it's foods that are a mixture of carbs and fats. Ice cream, pizza, chips, crisps, chocolate, donuts, all that kind of thing, right? Those are the really addictive things that you can't stop eating.
In this case, are you talking particularly about bad fats or also healthy fats in combination with carbohydrates?
Both of them. Now,
Both of them.
it's not so bad to have a bowl of cream and berries like I used to all the time when I was on low dose naltrexone and could stand it. But, you know, that's all natural. Yes, but it's still a mixture of carbs and fats. You don't get that in nature. If you get carbs like in fruit, there's no fat. If you get fat like in animals, there's no carbs. You don't mix them. If you do, you can't stop eating. It's like if you're really hungry, a steak tastes great. And you eat the steak and you maybe eat a steak and a half. Or if you're Sean Baker, you eat 3 steaks. I've been at dinner with him, and believe me, he can eat. It's amazing.
I think he's a great guy.
Yeah, he's cool. But if you eat a steak and you get or whatever meat and you're full, you've had enough, you don't want one more bite. But then you could eat a load of ice cream, right? You could. Because that, and you sit, you know, we used to make a joke in restaurants years ago. Well, I've still got a dessert stomach. You know, I can still eat some dessert. I'm stuffed, but I've always got room for dessert. And you always do. You can always do that. But you can't eat more steak than you possibly can fit. You know, it's just that's it. You've stopped. The proper hunger's finished. The rest is addiction. So that's the problem. When you see the processed food companies, they actually employ addiction specialists to hit that bliss point to create the perfect combination of carbs and fats. And then you're getting into the processed seed oils and grains. And so that's even worse.
Yeah.
The perfect combination of that so you can't stop eating.
Yeah.
You know, Pringles crisps, they have Pringles crisps and they have an advert. It says, once you pop, you can't stop. And it's true.
Yeah, that's true.
And that is like, that's cancer in a can, that stuff. It's awful.
Oh, yeah, I agree 100%.
Absolutely. So, you know, that's what they do. That's why nature, again, refer it to nature. Is that a good idea in nature? Did you ever make...
Yeah, imagine cavemen eating Pringles 10,000 years ago. That's
exactly.
That sounds ludicrous to me.
Yeah, exactly. Or did a caveman ever go and pick some berries, then put them in a bowl and then chase a mammoth around trying to milk it into the bowl to get some milk with their berries. No, that never happened either, right? So,
No, probably not.
the mixture of carbs and fats, they're kept apart, except in dairy. That's another reason why it's so addictive, because it is. I love cheese. I love it. It's so addictive. I could eat it all day long, blocks and blocks of it. I'd never stop. But that's because it's hyper palatable. And that's why it's also a problem. It's great for young animals. That's exactly what it's designed to do. But it's only in breast milk or various animal milks that the carbs and fats are actually present. A little bit in nuts, but basically in dairy for young animals in nature. And in nuts, and when do they come about? They come about in the autumn. So is there anything wrong with putting a little bit of fat on ancestrally for the winter? No.
Probably not.
Yeah. But
Makes sense.
year round, people basically in every meal, if you look at their meals, they pretty much have carbs and fats. Now, sometimes the vegans heal a bit to start with because they're taking away the fats from the carbs. They're not having much fat. But that's a problem in the long run, as are the plant toxins. Really, back to nature. What do we eat? Animals. That's it.
Do you think that also the combination of fat and carbohydrates can cause heart disease?
Absolutely. Yeah. 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 I mean, people blame it solely on the carbs, but there is actually less heart disease, or there's less inflammation if you have the carbs without the fats. And that's why veganism and vegetarianism can appear to be okay for a while. But it's based a lot on the carbs. But long term, you're still going to run into problems. There's a guy called Mango Wadzak or something, I can't remember, but he recently died of heart disease, and he was a 30-year fruitarian. So the fruitarians go, well, what, we can never get heart disease. This cures everything. Well, what happened to him then?
So he was just eating fruit?
Yeah. So he claims, right? He's
Okay.
one of these guys who claims that they have only eaten fruit for decades, like John Rose and a few others. What's his name? I can't remember. Wrote that book, The 80-20 Principle. I can't remember, but he's looking a bit dodgy now. And when he goes on interviews, he's obviously got brain fog. Things are going wrong. I forget his name now. Anyway, but yeah, the fruit thing, it's crazy. People come up and they go, no, humans are actually frugivores and this is what we're designed to eat. No, we're not. Presuming there was some kind of Darwinian evolution, which I doubt. I don't think that's how we came to be on this planet at all. But presuming there was, people say, oh, well, we were frugivores. Look at our ancestors. And well, okay, our ancestors are still up in trees throwing poo at each other. Is that the ones that still eat fruit? I mean, is that what you want to do? Or did we have our
decreased brain size?
Yeah, did we increase our bigger brain size by eating a load of meat and a load of fish? I don't think that's really how it happened. I don't know how we came to be here. Did we just appear here? Did we come from another dimension? Were we seeded here by the Anunnaki? Did we evolve from apes? I think that's the least plausible thing. But we're here and we are carnivores, and
we are here. Yes, that's a fact. So getting back to evolution. So you're doubting Darwinian evolution, which is a very widely accepted theory. So what do you think, or what is your grasp on our origin?
I don't know. I mean,
fair enough.
Where are the missing links? Where are these? Have you ever seen one species actually adapt into another in nature? It doesn't really happen. I've never seen evidence of a missing link between a chimp and us, or these sort of different races of hominids that came down as they think. I don't know. I think that there's a lot of things on an energetic and dimensional level that we probably don't understand at all about our past. Are we told the truth about any of our history? Does the timeline go exactly as we're told? I mean, now we're getting into real. We should be on the Forbidden Knowledge News podcast now.
Billy Carson.
Yeah, my friend Chris Matthew, he does the Forbidden Knowledge News one, and yeah, I've been on that. He's been on mine as well, but he has wonderful episodes on things like that. But who knows? I don't know. I've looked into all the different sides of it, and I don't know. And I think what creates a lot of problems these days is people who think they know about something. Now, I don't know if there's a better way of curing arthritis than eating all meat. I've never found it. And it seems to be the most powerful one out there at the moment. But I am open to something being different. And it's not going back to plants, because I've tried every other diet under the sun, right? It doesn't happen. But maybe there's a magic compound where you can eat pizza all day and look like Anthony Chaffee. I doubt it though, but you never know. But I'm open to that. But when it gets to things like, you know, all these things that people fight about these days, is the earth flat or what's happened? I don't know. I haven't been up.
Why would it even matter? I don't.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. Why would it matter? And why would it matter at all? I'm in a band. The guy who runs the band is a flat earther. Great. He does a great flat earth track. Am I a flat earther? No. Do I get in arguments with him? No, I don't care. And it's a great track. I like the drum part. It's a good groove. It's a good song. I play it. And I don't care. Now, on the subject of the earth, is it spherical or is it flat? I don't know, but I lean to more towards the simulation theory, that this is all a complete simulation and we don't know. So I don't know. Is there a huge amount of land beyond the ice wall in Antarctica? I don't know.
Yeah.
And I don't want to fall out with anyone who has a different perspective to me. So I think this is, again, coming back, why this ties in is that the elites, which have created chaos and division between us for such a long time, you know, as all through the COVID nonsense. Oh, you're an you're a sheeple. You're an anti-vaxxer. You're a granny killer. Or you're a normie. You're all this division. No, we're all just here, right? If we do have an enemy, it's the people who are trying to control us, trying to fake
elites.
Yeah, big pandemics in animals to try and kill off all the grass-fed cows and sheep. You know, all of this kind of thing. Those are the enemies, not each other, not somebody who eats slightly differently from you. I don't have any problem with vegans. I don't vegan bash. I do have a problem with the influencers, like these emaciated, slurring vegan docs who push veganism and fool people. I have a problem with those vegan propaganda films that fool people into the emotional side of it. And they do look very convincing to usually teenage girls. They're very common that they go vegan. And it's understandable, comes from a good heart. Oh, we love animals. We don't want to kill them. But they don't look at the deeper thing of what's going on there. And so I do have a problem with that. But I don't have a problem with my fellow man who has a slightly different opinion about anything.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy how the elites manage to divide us and, how would you say, to distract from themselves.
Yeah, totally.
It's crazy. Like, what's been going on in the last 5 years? I grew up in Germany, lived there almost my entire life. So I thought, oh, I'm set. I'm good. I live in Germany. Everything is fine. Before COVID happened, I was way too naive to believe that something like that would ever happen in my life, or that I mean, there are different opinions on that, but there might be World War III, and you know that there's so much stuff going on, and all of a sudden you're completely faced with that. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah, it was absolutely crazy, and it's I was already onto the whole bullshit in the medical system, the dietary system, and most of the spiritual thing. Actually, most of that's nonsense as well. But I wasn't into the real levels of the nonsense. I think it's woken up everybody from whatever position they were in. Well, some people haven't. I mean, some people are still walking around supermarkets wearing muzzles, for God's sake. I mean, that's really bizarre. But even here in 2025, I mean, it was mad enough in 2020. But now, my God, you've got to really be pretty unaware of what's going on to still wear one of those things. But yeah, it's woken me up on so many levels. The whole financial side of things and the whole political side and what's going on. It's been absolutely fascinating. Incredible division and mass genocide, I'd say.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe with a vaccination, yes.
Yeah, but we can go into that, but I don't want to get your channel pulled down too much because mine's destroyed from talking about that back in 2020. My YouTube channel, it's still heavily shadow banned. They don't like me at all on YouTube. But yeah, horrendous.
Did you lose followers?
No, it didn't exactly lose them, but what it was doing was I was hearing from people that when they were trying to subscribe, they'd get unsubscribed repeatedly. So I kind of stayed at the same followers, but it took ages to get. It's only in the past couple of years that I've managed to put a few more on. But it really is. I look at the views on the videos. I opened this TikTok account, which I swore I'd never do. And I put some little shorts up on TikTok, and suddenly you get 20,000 views. And I've only got like 40 people following me on TikTok. And I've got 15,000 or so on YouTube, and then I get 200 views on my videos. They're definitely shadow.
Doesn't sound realistic.
Yeah, they're definitely shadow banned. I mean, even one that I thought would go really viral was when my mother's breast cancer reversed on a carnivore diet. And I helped her out with that. And we got her breast cancer reversing on a carnivore diet and a Lugol's iodine protocol. And you can see the skin coming back to normal and the tumor reversing. And I've seen this several times, in cancer reversals on carnivore. Well, a lot. But this video, and it was entitled Carnivore Diet Breast Cancer Reversal Shocking Pick Warning. And I think it's still only got about 3,000 views. And yet another little section of that talk I gave, just called Myths About Meat, got about 250,000 straight away. And so they definitely shadow ban not only people, but certain subjects. And that was before I was shadow banned. And they don't like cancer reversal videos because that's the big cash cow. The whole con of the chemo business and whatever, medical system, the pharma companies, that's their big cash cow. They love that because they've got this fear-mongering thing that cancer is really dangerous. That's it. It's not curable. And very, very occasionally we might get rid of some tumors if you're lucky with the newest drug that we've got that you have to spend $5,000 a month on. It's a terrible, terrible scam. So they don't like that. Any cancer reversal videos are very, very suppressed.
So you mentioned chemotherapy. So I can imagine what you might think about chemo, but I'm still asking.
Well, it just basically destroys all the. Is there an immune system as such? Probably not exactly as we understand it, but it just destroys the body's ability to heal itself on its own. You get times when the chemo will get rid of certain tumors. And so people go, oh, look, my cancer's reversed. But then it generally comes back more aggressive in 5 years' time or so. And this can actually happen with the vegan protocols as well, like Gerson therapy, when they do all this green juicing and then their tumor dies down. Well, basically because it was a fast. But then down the line, the plant toxins build up again. You see the same thing. It can come back more aggressively in about 5 years, and it generally gets them then. But if you do it with a high-fat carnivore diet, then you're getting all the nutrients you need. You're not poisoning yourself, and the body can get rid of, when you see cancer reversals on that, as long as they stay strict, they generally are fine for life. It's gone. Long term, no problems, no emaciation, no plant toxin buildup, no bone density issues that vegans get, that kind of thing. And with chemotherapy, it just destroys the body. And I think the saddest thing about it is when a child gets cancer and then they get chemo and then they die, and then the parents go onto Facebook or whatever and start what's it called, a fundraising sort of campaign for cancer research, saying how wonderful the doctors were. And it's heartbreaking. It really is, because it's Stockholm syndrome, where you start to kind of fall in love with your captors.
Yes.
And they've got this view of doctors, and these doctors are not bad. They're not evil people. They really mean the best. But when you see the doctors that do discover actually how to heal these things or allow the body to heal, just in the same way as I've researched it, they found out in the same ways, whether it's Sean Baker, Anthony Chaffee, all these people, they didn't learn that in med school. They eventually realized they're not curing anyone. They're not curing anybody at all. And that must be very unrewarding, which is why I think there's a high suicide rate among doctors, because they're overworked. They're good people, most of them. Some of them can be very arrogant and egotistical when you argue with them, but they're generally really good people that have gone into it for good reasons. But they've been brainwashed by the med school, which is sort of run by the pharma companies and financed. And so, they get taught just how to be legalized drug pushers, and that's it. And they don't know any better. But and then they think idiots like me will never do anything. And that oncologist, he was actually a really nice guy. My mum's oncologist. And there was a point where, if anybody's heard this story before, my apologies, but it's a good story, and it illustrates what's going on in oncology, because I pointed out to him one day that there are loads of vending machines in the oncology department selling chocolate and crisps and that kind of thing. And this is just horrendous stuff. And he said, oh, I never thought about that. And I
What? You
said,
never thought
seriously?
about
I
that?
went, and he said, and I said, well, do you ever tell your clients, your patients, anything about diet? And he said, oh, yeah, really proudly. He said, yes, I tell them not to drink cow's milk, but to drink soy milk. And I just burst out laughing. I thought, if there's anything worse than cow's milk, it's soy milk. And you've just told me that my mum has a hormonally driven tumor, and the most hormonally disruptive food in the world probably is soy. And you've just told me to do that. And he looked totally confused. Anyway, time went on, and I got my mum on carnivore. She was 93 years old at this point, by the way. And she gave her an iodine protocol because I realized that could be very useful with anything hormonal to do with the thyroid and anything to do with the reproductive organs in a woman. It's very, very useful. So I was basically only guessing. I got lucky. I understand more about it now. But this was back 2017, I think. Anyway, she did this and I kind of lost hope. It looked like it was going to ulcerate through the skin. And so I said to the oncologist, well, he was a surgical oncologist. And so he was not so tied to the meds. And I said to him, so a bit more open minded. And I said, look, if I do fail in this, can you take the breast off or the whatever amount of it you need to take off if it's uncomfortable for her, if it ulcerates, if you can take that off on a local, because I don't want her to have a general anesthetic at that age. It's pretty dangerous. And he said, yeah, cool, I can do that. And then this appointment came up again. And I thought, well, I'll take her along. And he probably expects that we're going to come back and it's going to be a real mess and we're going to want an operation. I just didn't say anything. And it had totally reversed in this time. She'd come out. I thought I'd failed actually with it. And quite some time after we finished the iodine protocol for about 3 months. And then she came along and she said, look, it's disappearing. I'd given up. I'd stopped painting it on there every day. I'd just taken her back to 1 drop of Lugol's, just a maintenance amount. And one day she said, it's just disappearing. So I thought, no, you're nuts. And I had a look and went, wow. And it reversed really quickly. And so anyway, went back to this oncologist and he just examined her and I didn't say a word. And he turned around and he said, how did you do that? And I said, well, I told you how I was going to do it. And I said, well, you're an oncologist. Is that the first cancer reversal, natural cancer reversal you've seen? And he said, yeah. And I said, well, I'm a drummer and I've seen quite a few. And I just wanted to say that because it's not rocket science. You know, people have this thing, oh, you say you can cure cancer. No, I don't. I can tell you the influences that have probably led to you having that cancer. And if you remove them all from your life, it's very likely that that cancer will reverse and your body will do it. I can't cure cancer. I can't do anything like that, you know? But I can point out most of the things that have probably led you to that point that your body's got cancer, which is not even a disease. It's just the body encapsulating certain toxins when they get that bad that they can't, they don't want to let them loose into this bodily system, which is why quite often when people have tumors and then people get biopsies of the tumor, then the cancer spreads around the body because you kind of burst that bubble with the biopsy. And
Yeah, I heard about that.
yeah. And so, you know, the body knows what it's doing and the tumors themselves are not the problem. I said to him, what you need to do is to sort out healthy stem cells that will then create good cells in various parts of the body. You don't want to be killing off healthy cells with chemo along with the cancer cells. And he said,
Yeah.
are you in the medical profession? I went, no, I've just got half a brain. You don't, there is only one thing that cures cancer, and that is good stem cells, good, the body's systems. And he said, yeah, you're right. And I said, well, and what have you got? And they've basically got cut, burn, and poison, right? They've got surgery, which can be very useful sometimes. That's great. They've got burn with the radiation, and they got poison with the chemo. And that's all they've got. They've just got 3 modalities, and that's it. And so they'd never see anything reverse naturally. And it's a shame.
Yeah, sometimes the more I also learned about the medical system and the more skeptical I became, sometimes you ask yourself the question if there's anything they're doing right. I mean, that's a little over exaggerated maybe, but I mean, like that thought came to me when you talked about the biopsy. So some people might think you're doing a biopsy and yeah, I mean, what should be dangerous or might be dangerous about it? It's a maybe most natural thing to do in order to diagnose cancer. Then all of a sudden you hear that this even might increase the probability that the cancer spreads. Like that's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not totally down against them. I mean, you've got to be sensible about this. If you have a motorbike crash and break your leg, you go down to the hospital, get sorted. If you have something really acute, if you have got into the problem with all their diet advice in the first place, if you're having a heart attack, for sure, go down to the hospital. But then,
Yeah, we need hospital.
yeah, but then ignore their diet advice and run away.
Yeah, what's also
What we need, what we need in hospitals is an accident and emergency department and a human body department. That's all we need because the human body all works in conjunction. But at the moment, we got the hepatology, you've got the liver, you've got the kidney specialists, the nephrologists, you've got the oncologists, and then you've got the heart people, and cardiologists, and all of this, and all the body's split up into these different sections like it's not connected. And this is the problem with Western medicine. You've got to see how everything works in conjunction. And that's the problem. Ridiculous. So there should be a human body department. Otherwise, you just get sent round from one department to the other as each organ fails, and get different advice, get different med that set off all sorts of side effects with each other and don't work against each other. And then you end up dying from the meds. Ridiculous. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, if you are sent to separate specialists, so probably all the organs in the body communicate with each other and they work harmoniously together in integrity. And if you have like separate specialists, you're probably gonna have a high probability that your body is not gonna work in an integral way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you're going to be, it's unlikely the particular organ they're focusing on is going to work for long after they've got their way with it as well. It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. So hopefully the world's waking up. This is really changing. A lot of people are looking for alternative things. The trouble is that the profession that call us the quacks, they still have a hold on it, because there are a lot of quacks out there. There's a lot of snake oil salesmen, and they're making a lot of money. But they're not harming people as much as the people are with the chemo. But all these people who sell supplements and make millions, there is a lot out there. And they don't do as much harm. They might even sometimes do a little bit of good, but they don't do as much as harm as the medical profession and kill as many people. But they won't really heal you. And so the medical profession know that. And so then they go for the supplements. Then they don't really work either. Then they run back to their doctors, and the doctors can say, see what I mean? They're all idiots out there. But they actually aren't. If you look at the people who are doing the real ancestral medicine, if you like, that's working. And unfortunately, it's not very well paid. It's difficult to make ends meet. I wish that there were a load of supplements that people needed that worked. I could make a load of money selling them, but I've got too much integrity because I was in that much pain, and I know what it takes to get people out of that pain, and it's not taking supplements. And so I don't want to fool them. There are a couple here and there that are useful in short bursts, but only in specific cases. Like the iodine specifically. Say if somebody's got Hashimoto's, it can be very useful to bring the thyroid back online, although the medical profession tell you it's the most dangerous thing you can do for your thyroid. And that should be a clue that it's probably the thing that you should be taking. And so they demonize it like they demonize meat, And so there are certain things that are useful, and it's not just all about eating a carnivore diet, although that's incredibly powerful. But there's all sorts of other things. So all we get left with is selling information, really, and supporting people, selling courses, things like that. But it's very difficult to actually make a living at doing this because there's not much to sell. I mean, hopefully that's changing. I've just got involved with a new company called Zesty, which is actually spelled XEESTY.com. And we're just starting it off, which is matching up really good holistic practitioners to people who really need them. And it's a real honor to have been, there's friends of mine who are amazing at driving traffic and setting up all these algorithms and all these apps and things like that. And they've got huge finance and experience in this sector. But I'm looking after the practitioners, because I think one thing I do know, even though I'm not an expert in all areas, is whether a practitioner is a snake oil salesman or isn't, of the alternative ones. So I know that I can look at them and see that there's certain modalities that they're doing that are brilliant. And we're not just doing diet. There's people who are doing sort of emotional release, trauma, stuff like that, which goes hand in hand with it, which is beautiful. And I'm not strict with people being carnivore, but as long as they understand about what we actually ate in the wild, and not every, if someone's got diabetes, they don't need to go fully carnivore. Just drop the carbs and eat even crap food that has no carbs, and it'll sort itself out. But you might have other problems down the line from the plants, but diabetes is just easy. That shouldn't even be considered a disease. That's so simple to reverse. But, to get these practitioners together under this umbrella, it's just very early stages now. And that's mostly what I'm doing at the moment is inviting all these practitioners on. Luckily, because of my social media reach and whatever, and people who follow me, I have a load of practitioners who also follow me. And so I can put out, and get them all asking. And so we're sorting them all out and getting their profiles sorted. And it's really exciting to put this together with all these different practitioners who can work in different areas. Some are sort of really good at the whole quantum biology stuff and the circadian cycle, and some are great with the diet stuff, and some are great with the emotional stuff and other things too. And so, even birth, get to people natural birth, because health starts at birth. Well, health starts before birth with the health of the mother of all their lives, and particularly what they do during their pregnancy. And then, how you're born, this ridiculous business about,
It starts before you are produced.
yeah, the cesarean sections, that doctors like to do so they can know when they're going to be born and they can get home for dinner on time and that sort of crap. These are pushed on people that don't need them, and there's horrendous stuff. My friend Nikita Stark, who runs When Push Comes to Shove, great musician as well, but she's amazing. And to get, when you hear the horror stories that happen in obstetrics, with the births and all the stuff that they do, even the stuff that isn't at cesareans, and then even with the cesarean section, then you don't get the natural seeding of the bacteria down the birth canal and all of this kind of thing. So, and you get the umbilical cord cut too soon before the placenta stop pulsating, so you don't get the last of the nutrients in that you're supposed to have. All these things that are done in modern medicine are absolutely terrible. So,
Yeah,
to
so
put these practitioners together under one roof, and then that'd be great. So I'm excited about this whole Zesty project at the moment. I've never mentioned that on a podcast before, actually. So that's so new. So there we go.
yeah, so I mean, if you get born via C-section, I mean, you already said it pretty much, but that might be the start for gut imbalance, pretty much,
Totally. Absolutely. And I was
because you don't get the bacteria you need, so you don't really have a good flourishing balance in your gut, which, as we know nowadays, is pretty crucial for your holistic health.
Yeah, have natural birth unless there is a real serious emergency, which is only a fraction of a percent of the time that they fool us that there is. Birth is not an illness. We've done it with no hospitals for millennia.
An illness. Why would it be an illness?
It's not it's not something you need to run into hospital for. It's nothing like that. So yeah, I was C-section. Did that contribute to my autoimmune issues? Did the jabs that I had when I was young, did they contribute to it? Did the tonsils and adenoids that I had ripped out because they thought that just because you have an inflection in your tonsils, the best thing is to rip it out? Absolutely crazy things they do. And so I'm probably disadvantaged, and I have to be stricter maybe than other people that don't, that have got all their bodily organs and that they've not been jabbed and whatever. My two youngest kids, I have kids of 34 and 16 and 9, and my two youngest were cesarean, and we were probably conned into that. However, my youngest is probably the healthiest, because although he did have some eczema, psoriasis when he was younger, that probably came, I would say, from being cesarean and not having the right gut bacteria. We knew enough now to he was just fed breast milk, and then when he was weaned, he just ate meat, and that was it for a couple of years before chocolate made an appearance. But he still never had a vegetable, and he is now, all the skin issues have cleared up little bit. If he eats a big chocolate binge, you see it in his skin a little bit, nothing like it used to be, but you can see that just don't do that. It's nasty stuff. But now he is probably the healthiest. I mean, he's incredible kid. He's incredibly healthy, muscular, acrobatic, incredibly intelligent, and he's never eaten a vegetable. You don't need them, and he's the healthiest of my kids, with also the best spaced teeth and jaw. And that's a real thing for people who eat ancestral diets. If you see vegetarian babies, from vegetarian mothers, the jaws can be a bit narrower, the teeth crowded. Like my 16-year-old daughter, she's beautiful, but a narrower jaw because my missus was veggie during that pregnancy. And so you can see the jaw. In fact, Anthony Chafee was saying to me, the progression of your kids is an absolute example of how you've learned how to feed them. Because my 34-year-old kid, we brought him up veggie. He had all sorts of problems, including an aneurysmal bone cyst in his neck, which involved an operation to remove a whole vertebra so that he wasn't going to be paralyzed from the neck down. Now his neck is still full of titanium, 22 years later. That was great. The medical system helped him not to be paralyzed. But what we were told was healthy to eat by not only the mainstream, but by the spiritual people, because I was really a proper yogi there with my ex-wife. And we did him a terrible disservice, really, by bringing him up like that. Now he looks great. He's fantastic. He really understands a lot more about this than me, probably. He has to. And he's very cool, but he's had some troubles in the past. We do our best, and we bring up the kids as best as we know. But now I know a lot better. But no
Yeah,
more,
I mean,
please. No more. I'm 63. Please, no more kids.
no more kids. Yeah, so there was also, I follow a guy on Instagram, he said that it's very important for children to eat meat for their entire development, brain development,
Totally.
and everything.
Totally. I think it's bad enough being vegan yourself, but that's your own choice. But bringing your kids up vegan is child abuse. I'm sorry, it's child abuse. I mean, seriously, look at the amount of vegans that have been prosecuted around the world for feeding their kids ridiculous diets with no meat in, and sometimes killing them. You know, their kids have died. And if you look it up, there have been quite a lot of cases recently around the
They
world.
died of malnutrition or what?
Yeah, yeah. Just, you know, at that early stage, it's so important. And vegan parents have been prosecuted. And I think it's sad because they think it's the right thing to do, but it's extremely dangerous. If you're vegan and you're pregnant, just please wake up, stop it. It's not healthy, and you could really mess your child up for life. And just think of your kid and really look into it. If you won't do it for yourself, do it for your kids, because it's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's generally pretty crazy what's going on nowadays. I don't know when exactly it started, but like in the 70s, something, they started demonizing healthy fats like meat. And they really started promoting carbohydrates, refined sugars, and also unhealthy fats. It's like, it's funny. Like if you understand what's going on, it's like, it's funny. It's comical.
It is bizarre, isn't it? It's where it started with Ansel Keys, didn't it? That guy in the 60s or 50s, and he was asked by the government in America or whatever, to somebody, one of those awful bad health organizations, whatever they're called, and to find out what was the cause of the increase in heart attacks in America. Was it fats or was it carbs? Was it sugar? He was paid off by the sugar industry, and he sort of falsified these studies, the 7-country study, wasn't it?
Yeah, I heard about
Yeah,
that.
to try and prove that it was saturated fats. It was absolute nonsense. And the thing is, he left a wake of people obese and sick and dead in America with his ridiculous advice. And he went off to live in Italy and ate a nice high fat diet, lots of fish, and lived in one of those sort of blue zones, as they like to say, where they pretend they eat plant-based diets, but they actually don't. And he went there and he ate exactly what he told everybody else not to eat and lived to 100 years old. Ansel Keys, absolute criminal, that man.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, if you look at what they were promising and promoting and how many people are obese nowadays,
Yeah,
crazy.
crazy. And, you know, I always had trouble keeping my weight down all my life. Now I eat as much as I possibly want, anytime I want, stuff my face, never put on any fat. It doesn't happen. You know, I'm the only 63-year-old I know around here, or probably most people over 30 these days, without a belly. There's very few. Most people have that kind of dad bod, and it's very difficult to get rid of it unless you just eat a load of fat and protein, and then it just sorts itself out and it won't come back.
Anyone who's doing a carnivore diet will automatically lose weight. You probably cannot be obese when you eat meat. Like, it's probably very hard.
Yeah. Let's specify though, lose fat, because, you know, there's also those criminal organizations like Weight Watchers and Slimming World, which try and starve people, calorie counting, which is ridiculous. And then they have these, you know, sins, or you can have a few sins a week, which are these fatty foods. It's ridiculous. So people end up losing weight, and then they pile it all back on again because it's all been done with willpower. And then they find it more difficult the second time. And all this time, when they're in the cycle of losing weight, they're also losing muscle and bone density. And so it's not about losing weight. I say throw the scales away and use a tape measure and a mirror. And that will give you a better idea of what's going on. Because some women who've been on vegan diets or low carb, low calorie diets, that kind of thing, they come onto a carnivore diet, they actually gain weight initially. And then sometimes I'll say to them, well, you know, how is the measurement? Right? Well, how's your waist? And they'll measure their waist, go, wow, I've lost 3 inches around my waist. How come I'm heavier? Well, because your muscle density is increasing, your bone density is increasing. So let's look at it, you know, losing the fat. And also, women can lose fat quite a lot slower than men because they're a little bit more complex hormonally. And some people hit certain plateaus with losing fat on carnivore because the body, again, knows best. And the body stores a load of toxins in the fat. And if you lose fat very quickly, you can also run into trouble because you get an overload of toxins in your body. And this is particularly true for oxalates because it's well known, even outside the carnivore community, that people who lose weight too fast, they very often get kidney stones. And that's because the body's releasing a load of oxalates at once. And then the kidneys get overloaded and it calcifies in there and then they get the stones. And so, it can happen as well on carnivore diet. People can get oxalate dumping down the line. There are adaptation issues with the carnivore diet. You can get, while the body adapts from carbs to fats, there can be some issues. Electrolyte balance, people can get palpitations, that kind of thing. You can get brain fog. You can get things like that. It's usually easily fixable, even with a little bit of Celtic sea salt in some water and swill it down can fix the electrolytes while the body's balancing. I got so bad with palpitations, I got hospitalized in the early days of keto because I didn't understand about the electrolytes. And so I actually went into hospital. My heart was missing every third beat. I was thinking, is it going to actually even start again?
Yeah, electrolytes are
Yeah.
crucial. Yeah.
It was that bad. And all I needed to do was drink a few glasses of really salty water. I'd have been fine. And I didn't figure it out for about 6 months. I was taking magnesium, all sorts that helped a bit. But all I needed was just real salty seawater, basically, and it sorts it out. And then down the line, you can get oxalate dumping, at about the 3-month mark. That can often happen. If you are a stone former, which most people aren't, you can get kidney stones, or you can get like cloudy pee, stinging pee when you go to the toilet. You can get some rashes, things like that as oxalates come out. Or another thing is when people think that they're constipated. I think it's funny. There's 3 things that people ask me more than anything about the carnivore diet when they're coming into it, or when they're trying to say, when they first heard about it and think it's insane. Number 1, what do you have for breakfast? Now, this isn't really a concept to me. It's, what is it? We're 10 to 2 here now. I haven't eaten today. And I'm a bit hungry. I might eat when we finish this. But I might.
Me too.
Yeah, I might leave it another couple of hours. You don't really get hungry. You don't have a concept of breakfast. But if I am hungry in the morning, I'll eat in the morning. But there's no breakfast thing. And I'll eat whatever I eat any other time. What's there? Fatty beef and lamb. I'll eat that. That's my food.
Sounds good.
Yeah, cavemen were not sitting around. They didn't wake up in the morning and think, I wish somebody would hurry up and invent Cocoa Pops.
Or some cereal or fruit, ridiculous Fruit Loops that will pretty much make your children sick and deteriorate their potential and their development.
Exactly. So,
Fruit Loops, what the heck? Give your children Fruit Loops for breakfast? Sprayed gluten cereal, that's why they are so, so agitated in school, maybe,
Yeah. And you mustn't have the full fat milk either. I mean, the only good thing about dairy is the fact that it has some good fats in it. So you give them the skimmed milk, which is basically just sugar water anyway. So it's just ridiculous, the whole thing. Yeah. So yeah, the concept that there's children's food. No, we're all humans. You just eat food. Anyway, that's what they are about breakfast. And the second thing is, how do you ever have a poo? Well, you don't have any fiber in your diet. How do you ever poo? And sometimes I just say to them, look, I haven't had a poo for 10 years. I just don't bother. If you compare the times when I was veggie and I used to have to run to the toilet about 6 times a day. And then now, just one perfect poo every morning. And that's it. Once your gut sort yourself out.
Right?
That's it. No, you don't need any fiber. Fiber causes all the problems it's said to cure. And in the absence of all the processed foods, you don't need any fiber. You just need the most fats. Fats also, that's another thing about fats. If you have enough, then they'll keep you regular and you'll poo enough. And that's great. It works every time. It can get a bit weird in the first month or so. People feel that they're constipated. Well, they don't feel it. They just haven't had a poo for a couple of days. But you pass less, and then you say, well, are you bloated? Are you in pain? And they go, no. Well, you say, well, that's it. You don't poo out so much because you're not pooing out all that indigestible fiber. So you just do a good, perfect poo, and then you feel fine. And if you don't have a poo for a couple of days, don't panic. It's not constipation. It's just that your body's not used to passing so little yet. Then the third issue is they say, how'd you get your vitamin C? Why haven't you got scurvy? That's always the 3 main questions for me. And the scurvy thing is interesting because they say, well, all the old ship's captains, they didn't have vitamin C, they didn't have fruit on board, and all the sailors used to get scurvy. And that's true because they used to have dried meat like jerky and ship's biscuits. They were called hardtack, I think. And so they ate that. Yeah, you're going to get scurvy because you've got no vitamin C and you're having carbohydrates. Now, carbohydrates compete for the same pathway as vitamin C. And so as long as you're having good fresh meat, you'll never get scurvy. I don't know any carnivore that's got scurvy, although the vegan docs still say, this carnivore diet, they're all going to get scurvy. Well, if you're going to get scurvy, you're going to get it within 3 months or so. I've been 10 years now. I don't have scurvy. So how is that possible? And nobody else I know who's been doing it years or even longer than me has scurvy. The Inuit don't get scurvy. The Maasai don't get scurvy. So why is that? Well, even the old ship's captains knew that if you had fresh meat, it would reverse scurvy, let alone prevent it. You didn't need limes. You didn't need lemons and oranges on the ships to get your vitamin C. That would help if you're eating carbohydrates, but if you're not, also people presume that there's no vitamin C in meat.
Yeah, I was going to ask.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they say there's no vitamin C in meat. And you actually say, if you look at where they get that came from, they actually presumed there was none. But there is actually vitamin C, and there's quite even more in liver.
That surprises me, but that's impressive. Okay.
Yeah, there's even more in liver. And if you're not eating carbohydrates, there's easily enough vitamin C in meat, especially if you eat liver, to be easily enough. And you'll never get scurvy or never have a vitamin C deficiency either. But then again, there's a load of people who just eat muscle meat and never eat liver, and they don't get scurvy either. They're absolutely fine as long as they don't eat carbs. But so no, those are the three things I generally get asked. Yeah, you'll be fine. You won't die of scurvy. You'll poo absolutely fine. And after a while, there's nothing like lamb chops for breakfast.
So some people say you need fiber for gut integrity and gut health. So you're saying you don't need fiber.
No.
How does the gut keep itself healthy on a carnivore diet without fiber? What is your take on that?
Well, there's two sides to that. There's the integrity of the gut. So plants rip the gut to bits, and so they cause all the problems in that respect. But there's another side to it where people say, well, you need a diverse microbiome. A healthy microbiome is a diverse one. Well, nobody understands the microbiome. I don't, they don't. Nobody understands what goes on in the microbiome. And I like the expression that Sean Baker has, that a healthy microbiome is one that a healthy person has. And that varies widely. So sometimes when people go carnivore, the microbiome does diversify, and sometimes it simplifies. And yet they get rid of all their ailments and all their digestive issues. So what's going on in the microbiome? There's trillions of different bacteria in there. Nobody knows. Oh, you need this one lactobacillus. You need that. You need to take this probiotic. That's all a con. You take these capsules of probiotics. They're probably all dead in there. You know, you don't know how long.
Yeah, they don't seem very effective to me.
No, not at all. Not at all. And people have all this fermented foods. And, you know, I mean, fermenting foods and making your own sauerkraut, fair enough. Maybe it might help a bit. But it takes some of the toxins out if you ferment it. But if you just don't eat it at all and just eat fatty meat, sorts itself out anyway. People got obsessed with the microbiome, I think, around the time when they did these studies on the Hadza in Tanzania. And, they have a really diverse microbiome because they eat such a wide variety of plants. Well, actually, they don't. They don't eat as wide a variety of plants as people think they do, and they don't like fiber that much. If they do have tubers, quite often they chew it up to get a little bit of the carbs out of it and then spit out the fiber. So they're not chewing up on a load of tubers. When people actually go stay with them, they see it's a very different story. They do eat more plants, say, than the Maasai, but they also have more health issues. Far fewer than your average Westerner, but they have a few, and their dental work is not so good. Well, they don't get any dental work, right? Their teeth are not so perfect as the Maasai's, for example. And the Maasai eat no plants generally, the ones that are on their blood, milk, and meat diet, you know. And then again, they do have a few issues, less than the Hadza, but few issues that the Inuit don't have, because the Inuit don't have the milk. Is the milk the one mistake the Maasai make? Whereas they're amazingly tall, healthy, 7 foot, bring lions down with their bare hands, that kind of thing. Whereas the Hadza are not quite so impressively robust. Who knows? But, you know, those ancestral diets are definitely a lot better than ours. But yeah, the microbiome, if you go to my Substack, it'll be on it. If you go, Vincent will put the links down below to my link tree and whatever. And
Certainly.
if you go to my Substack, that's what I use for a mailing list as well. But I've recently done a full Substack on have we been lied to about the microbiome. And I put it all together there with studies on the Hadza and the Maasai and the Inuit. And it's fascinating to see their different gut microbiomes, and yet they're all healthy. So nobody understands it. It's all nonsense. If somebody claims to be an expert on the microbiome, they're lying. I'm sorry.
It's as complicated as quantum physics.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So maybe you said earlier that a carnivore diet can heal cancer. What do you think are the mechanisms in the body that are being induced on a carnivore diet that will heal cancer?
I don't think meat heals anything. I think it's just our food. What heals is taking away the toxins out of the food, and that's the plants. You know, it's not that meat heals, it's eating no plants heals. And this is something that Anthony says, 95% of the benefits come when you drop the last 5% of the plants. And I like that. I've seen that, definitely. I've felt it in my own life, and I've seen it in a lot of clients and what people have said online. Things like complicated cancers, if you like, and the neuro issues like multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's, they're kind of slow to heal. They're kind of tricky. And I see people getting more results when they drop the last few veg than when they went from their crazy Western diet to a keto diet, for example. They'll get more results going carnivore from there than they did originally, which is quite amazing when you first think about it. But the thing is, if there are no toxins going into the body, none at all, the body goes into a really heightened state of autophagy and apoptosis. Quickest way to reverse cancer? Dry fast. No food, no water, 11 days. That's the quickest way. Second quickest, maybe a water fast, but on a water fast, you lose muscle and you lose bone density. You don't, well, muscle definitely, but you don't lose muscle on a dry fast because the body's looking for hydration rather than nutrition. So it's going and looking for all the water that is not needed in the body, which will be in cells like cysts, tumors, that kind of thing. So then it will go and blow up the tumors and whatever it doesn't need and heal that up. I mean, we all have cancer cells in our body at any given time.
Certainly. Yeah.
And we all have systems to clear that up. The problem is when the body becomes overloaded and then problems start and it becomes diagnosed as cancer as such. But that's only when there's a toxin overload. So the thing is to take away everything, like, again, subtraction, that lovely phrase or saying as well that I often use. I love it. If you're sitting on a pin, don't take an aspirin to get rid of the pain. Get off the fucking pin, right?
Yes.
So there's the thing. You just, it's not the meat that heals the cancer. It's the not eating the plants that heals the cancer. So, you've got that cancer probably from decades of processed foods, seed oils, dairy, probably, plant toxins. You've got it from not having your circadian rhythm sorted. So you're under artificial light at night, which messes up the whole hormonal system. You're exposed to EMFs, radiation all the time. You've got always on your phone. All of these things that mount up. There's stuff that they spray in the air. Yes, they do spray it. The jabs that we've had, the medications we've had in the past, all of these things mount up to cancer. The tribes don't get cancer. They don't get heart disease. They don't have words for these ailments.
They don't know cancer and heart disease.
No, they don't know it. And people go, oh, well, they only live to 30. They don't have time to get it. Well, look at all the kids that get cancer now. No, seriously. And they don't only live to 30. These people live to real old ages. My friend, Mary Ruddick, who goes around and lives with all these tribes, the remote ones. I mean, she's seen them up to 120, still dancing with the tribe. No ailments whatsoever. They're absolutely fine. And so they don't have any of these issues because they don't get overloaded by the toxins on all levels. They have natural light. They're grounded. They've not got rubber-soled shoes. They don't get stresses. They build their hut or their house or whatever they build there, and the bank doesn't take it away. They don't have to make mortgage payments every month, so they've not got these stresses. All of these things add up, and they're all little things that we can do to fool the body. You don't need to go live in the rainforest or go up into the Himalayas or something like that. You don't need to do that to heal, although if you can, it's probably the quickest way to do it. But if you get grounded in the morning, get natural light in your eyes, if you go out in the sun and get enough sun without any sunscreen, without any sunglasses, if you take all the toxins out of your diet, if you stop using all these makeup things and antiperspirants and horrible chemicals, and if you stop drinking tap water that has all the fluoride in, and if you cover all these bases and look at your whole lifestyle, it's very, very likely that your cancer will reverse, that the body will sort itself out. It does it many times, and they go spontaneous remission. No, it isn't.
Spontaneous remission.
That's what they call it.
Unexpected remission.
Yeah. Well, that's what the doctors call it. They go, oh, well, we don't know why that happened.
Because they're confused.
Yeah. If I was a doctor, I'd be looking into stuff like that. I wouldn't be going, oh, well, that was just luck. Next chemo. What happened to that person? What did they do? That's what they should be looking at. But their profession is selling those drugs. It's not curing people. A person cured is a customer lost, and that's not what the medical system is set up to do.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, also in hospitals, what's very confusing, I also asked myself that as a child. I also always had the intuition as a child when I went to the doctor, this place doesn't feel right. From just not a rational perspective, from an emotional perspective.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't feel like that those people are doing what they are promising me to do, what their status is telling them to do. Like, it seems antagonistic. The appearance is antagonistic to the truth. Or that also in hospitals, you would think it's a place of health, maybe also divinity, you might say. And then you see all the crappy food they serve people: toast, dessert,
Yeah.
Coca-Cola, pasta. Like, how are you supposed to heal up after surgery? I mean, when you are in hospital, you're probably not going to be healthy. So, and then feeding inflammatory foods, I think that's going to mess with the healing process. So it's like, yeah, well,
Yeah. And then there's artificial light on all the time. Some of the worst, you know, they've got the strip lights in there usually. And that really does affect people. The amount of women that get breast cancer who work night shifts, it ruins your hormones. People say, oh, it can't be that important. Like there's Jack Kruse, probably one of the biggest brains on the planet, Dr. Jack Kruse, who did the foreword to my book, and he's become a good friend. But he is all about light and sun. He says it's all about that. Stop talking to people about diet. It's all about light and sun. You can eat anything if you want, if you're out in the sun enough. I actually disagree with him on that, but he does have a good point about the sun and the light.
you cut off right now.
If you're under artificial light all the time at night, even looking at your phone, you're not going to be sleeping right. The hormones are going to be wrong and you're not going to heal. They wake you up at night, don't they? They come in and they blast the lights on. Let's take some obs. Let's take your blood pressure. Let's do this. Let's do that. Crazy. Absolutely crazy. You there, Vincent? We lost you.
There you are.
You got back in.
Yes, I think I'm going to leave the studio for a second. I will check if the recording got saved.
Well, it says it's still recording now. So are you good at editing? Because we'll just have to edit that bit out and then wrap it up, I guess.
Yeah,
it should record it fine. It was recording. It's just that you'd have to shut down the recording at your end. But it depends. Do you want to do a sort of, oops, we had a technical difficulty, and then carry on and do the sort of outro bit?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. We could do that.
Okay. So you're good. You're good at chopping it up. You can do that. I'm crap.
Yeah, I can do that for sure. I will cut it out, and the transition is going to be smooth, I suppose.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Just say, we had a bit of a technical thing there. Where were we up to? And carry on.
I'm just going to close the door 1 sec. All right. So.
Oh, I can't hear you now. Something happened and can't hear you. Just that second. No, can't hear you. It was okay before, and then I think you put the headphones in and something happened. I can hear something now. Yes. Well, I tell you what, try it. If you stop the recording now, right, and I leave this open so that mine uploads properly, and then ping me a message to tell me what's happening, and then we can jump back on. Riverside, it should be equipped for this kind of thing, and it should have saved it all. But it won't save my side until the recording stops. If you stop recording now and we can just chat, it should do it. So if you stop it recording now, no, it's still.
All right. So we had a little technical issue here and we resolved it. And yeah, I think we stopped at the point where we talked about healing processes, or not the antagonistic side to healing processes of hospitals. So we're talking about inflammatory foods that are not very supportive of healing processes. And what also one can add, as far as I'm concerned, hospitals used to have those sun decks, right? So people could go to the sun deck and they could get energized with sunlight, because it also supports healing. But nowadays, well, they don't
Not
have
allowed
it
outside, lights on, windows shut. Yeah, that's where we were on that. And I was talking about the whole thing about light and how people say that it's not that important. But if you look at nature, the whole of nature is ruled by light cycles. And so whether it's through the day or whether it's through the year, all of this, nature obeys the light cycles. And if you mess them about, things go horribly wrong. They leave all the lights on in these battery chickens in these awful factory farms, and they lay all around the clock, and they don't live long, and they're unhealthy, but they don't care. So it ruins all their hormones as well, and it does to us. the whole thing of light is very important. I always take people through that on consults and say that, however good the food is that you're eating, if the light isn't right and you're not sleeping properly, you're not going to heal. So, in our house, we have 3 snakes. We've got a corn snake and a royal python and a boa constrictor, and they've got little lights in their vivariums, and so you can turn them onto red. So they're very dim at night, and they face backwards into the cage. That's the only light that we have in our living room at night. We used to use candles until we had a cat that I thought would probably set fire to itself, so we don't use them anymore. But they're good. These salt lamps, they're very nice to have around at night. But and we even have a screen on the front of the TV. If anybody watches it after dark, then there's no blue light coming out of it. I have iris on the computers, and also on my Substack, I've got a whole Substack about sorting out the light in your house, and it's I think it's called Top Tips for Better Sleep or something. But there's a lot you can do. Your phone, I have that set on nighttime all day. And then at night, I have it on red. I have it set up so you can just click 3 times on the side and it just all goes completely red, and have that on airplane mode at night. I mean, if you wake up at night, great. You can listen to a podcast or something as long as it's on airplane mode. Just don't stare at your screen on full blue at night. So you don't have to give up all of these things, but there's ways that you can live and make little adjustments to modern life to have all the benefits of modern life and ancestral wisdom, if you like. So, yeah. It's not difficult.
But I think a lot of people are confused nowadays about what is right and wrong, because it's also they always listen to the system and they made themselves and their fate dependent on the system. And I think the system was very successful at confusing them. And now they got that dependency, but the dependency is, very toxic and Luciferian, let's say. And so also what I see nowadays, when there are people who give advice to people who are very sick, they're like, how can I know that this is the right path? I got so many advice in my life and everything was mistaken. How can I walk the right path right now? So yeah, people are really boxed into those systems, let's say.
Totally. Yeah. It's the comfort zone, isn't it? We don't want to change. We want to sit there with a packet of popcorn watching Netflix and a few beers. And it's just addictive. It's very easy to slide into that. But one of the main drivers, I think, is when you get very sick, and that there is no motivation like wanting to get out of terrible pain. So that's, again, why it was the best thing that happened to me, because it just gave me a good kick up the arse to change and sort of look at loads of different aspects, Yeah, it's good.
So you mentioned earlier that you consumed low-dose naltrexone. So for the listeners who don't know low-dose naltrexone in general, what does it do to the body? What does it do?
Well, as far as I understand it, naltrexone was made as a drug for people to take who were drug addicts or alcoholics, and then it makes it pretty unpleasant when you take that stuff, or ineffective, whatever. But that was in sort of 50 to 300 milligrams a day, I think. And they found even then it wasn't harming people's livers. But then somebody called Bihari, I think, Dr. Bihari or something. Anyway, he discovered that if you took it in very small doses, like 3 to 4.5 milligrams a day, it was helping reverse cancer, reverse autoimmunity, all sorts. And it doesn't work by shutting down inflammatory pathways. It works on the opiate receptors, I think. And so it shuts them down for a certain amount of time, and then they sort of come back in full force and give you this sort of happy period, if you like. And it works in that kind of way, I think, which is a lot safer. But it's still, it's just, did our ancestors take LDN? No.
No.
Yeah. So it's a Band-Aid, and it's a safe one. And for people who really cannot change their diet or don't believe it or something, it can be useful. I mean, I was talking to Anthony Chaffee about it, and he said that he does prescribe it sometimes. And most doctors refuse to prescribe it because it only
sure.
It only costs about $25 a month, and they want them on the,
is that cheap?
Yeah, they want them on the drugs that cost $5,000 a month. Because LDN's, naltrexone is out of patent, so they can't charge this massive amount on it. So because it's all competitive now, so the patents run out. I mean, it's been around for decades, but these new drugs, they want you all on them, where they're all patented and they can charge what they want. It's all a business model. That's what goes on. I mean, there are some quite safe drugs out there. There's some that are reasonably useful in acute cases and short term, but they're mostly the ones that are out of patent. So doctors don't prescribe them. And even if you ask to prescribe them, what? You're standing there and staring. Come here then. Come on. This is my youngest son. So
Nice to meet you. How are you doing?
this is Peter.
Good.
And he's cool and very healthy and claims to.
Likes to eat meat.
Yeah, he certainly eats a lot of meat. Right. Yes.
That's good.
See you later, mate. Yeah, they're on half term at the moment. No, sorry, holidays, Easter holidays.
Yeah, we also have Easter holidays now in Germany.
Yeah. So yeah, I just think these things like LDN are unnecessary if you have the confidence to go really strict with this. And I would say that the most important thing is like the first module of my course. It's not about anything to do with what you do. It's just about having the confidence and where to look for this confidence. There are so many what they call useless anecdotes out there now. I mean, tens of thousands of them of how this works, and that trumps any study. There's all of human history where we ate like this. I've started up a new little sub sort of section of my podcast. I've got a podcast that I just started. I had a podcast called Red Pill Buddhas, and now I've got one called Red Pill Sangha, which is the collective rather than a single Buddha. And I thought that was more apt these days with the collective waking up. But I've got a little subsection of it that I call Useless Anecdotes, where I get people on for sort of 15 minutes to half an hour to just talk about their amazing reversals of all kinds of different things. I've got loads of them lined up. It's only new at the moment, just starting. But I just think that there's so many stories out there now about how it works. So that gives people confidence. Getting into groups, because often if you go carnivore, your family think you're lunatic. Your friends do, and your doctor definitely does. And so you get people telling you that you're going to die and your cholesterol's going to blow up and all of this rubbish. And so it's difficult. So I would say get into a community. You know, I mean, on my Substack for my paid members, I do a call every Sunday at 6:00 UK time, and they can get on that and chat. And it's often more inspiring to see people who are maybe a couple of weeks or a couple of months down the line than someone who's 10 years down the line, you know, because they can go, oh, yes, well, that happened to me in the second week. And then by that time it was okay, you know, and by the third week or the fourth week, my arse wasn't exploding anymore. And so, you can get that kind of support. It's very important. And there's always questions that arise, you know, all these little questions when you're new to it. So get on some kind of support group with it, you know, even just join a Facebook group. You know, mine's free. My Substack's only $19 a month. If you want those weekly calls, that's nothing. And just, you know, get
affordable.
Yeah, get to these kind of things. And, you know, if you're really in a mess and you really are in a sort of acute phase of suffering, do get a consult. Whether it's me, I mean, if you've got rheumatoid or psoriatic, I'd say, yeah, come to me. I've got all the tweaks, everything. I've been through it, you know, but if you've got something else, there's a load of people out there doing these great carnivore consults and circadian rhythm consults, and just, you know, get to one of them, the one that appeals to you, talk to them, get an initial consult. Because when I think what I spent half my inheritance. I lost a renovation property business from being that ill. I just spent years researching it, and I could give somebody that knowledge within a 1.5 hour consult, you know, that was really the important stuff that took me that long to learn.
Yeah, and that's way cheaper than what you spend.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, you know, go talk to somebody who really knows about it, get back online, and you will heal. It's not rocket science. And just get the confidence by looking at all these stories out there that people are healing without the docs and they're not healing with them. You know, get rid of white coat fever. These people are not gods. They don't know everything. They just spend 7 years learning how to push.
They're not as sacred as they are portrayed.
Exactly. Perfect. Yeah. And
they are not God.
And when people say, you know, I've got also a post on my Substack, which is called "You're Not a Doctor, Who the Fuck Do You Think You Are?" Because that's what people have said to me so many times. Vegans, dietitians, just all sorts of people have said that. They get angry. Where I point out that I studied diet for 30 years and I was wrong. And that was 15 years ago. So it's like 45 years or something I've studied diet.
Yes, that means that doctors can also be wrong.
Yeah. Well, doctors have studied diet for 1 day at the most in their 7 years. And that is
3 or 4 hours.
Yeah. And that is the wrong diet. So they're experts. Well, they're not even experts in the wrong diet. And they think that you should go to them for dietary advice and ignore people like me. Well, do that at your own peril. I think you can get better dietary advice if you go to your local garage or laundrette or whatever than you will do ever at your doctor. Nonsense, yeah.
When you said that sunlight is very important for your entire full health. So you live in the UK. You don't have much sunlight. What are you doing in order to equalize that lack of sunlight?
Well, I've got awful, Northern European skin. Now, my missus, as you can see, my boy who just appeared there, he's mixed race. My missus is from Tanzania, very dark. Now, she's in trouble up here. And Jack Cruz always said to me that you've got that black missus of yours in the north of England. She's going to get sick eventually. And she did. She ended up with Graves' disease. And I think a lot of it was, it was down to the fluoride that she was fed in the water, which is very high in Arusha in Tanzania. That will blow up the thyroid. The vegetarianism for 20 years that she was on, and not having enough sunlight because she needs a lot. Now, I don't need so much. It's enough for me to get out in the summer, but
once in a while.
It's enough. But the important thing is more to get it on your body at different times of day and to get out in the morning to get that light to trigger the melatonin production that allows it to be released in the evening when you dim the lights. The melatonin cortisol cycle, you get that healthy, you'll sleep right. A lot of people come along and they say, well, I've been wearing my blue blockers at night and yet I'm still not sleeping right. Okay, well, are you getting out in the morning and getting natural sunlight? No. Well, what are you doing in the morning? Oh, well, I check my phone. Yeah. Right. That's telling your body that it's midday, because the light that goes in your eyes from your phone has more blue light even than midday, if you've got no filters on it, for a start. And so people are doing that. That's how they wake up these days. And so wearing blue blockers at night is not going to be much use then, because you've not told the body to produce melatonin to release at night to allow you to sleep. So again, it's all about referring it back to nature. So if you live in the north of England and you've got a skin type that can survive there, then just get out as much as possible. And that's it. And when the sun is out, run out before they start spraying the chemtrails and blow up the sunlight as well, bastards, which they do here. As soon as we get a few sunny days, suddenly the sky is crisscrossed with hundreds of those chemtrails. And then the next day is cloudy, like today. It's cloudy. Yesterday was beautiful.
Yeah, that's what I saw like for a couple of seconds ago. And then you mentioned that, yeah, similar in Germany.
I know. We do the best we can. We're never going to be as good as we were ancestrally. People say, well, you're still not eating ancestrally. Well, we do as close as we can. We eat ruminant animals, right? If we want to really eat ancestrally, it's unfortunate because there's no more aurochs, there's no more mammoths, and we can't go and get them. But we just do the best we can, and that tends to work. But it is really not an excuse for going and poisoning yourself with rice and lentils or being a fruitarian or something like that.
One last question, and I think we're good to wrap it up. Do you think that there is one, and the question might be a little silly, but I'm still gonna pose it the way I would pose it. Do you think there's one universal diet for people to be healthy, or does it also depend on genetics and where you're from, ethnicity?
No, I think in my experience, people say, well, what about this ethnicity? What about blood type? That's nonsense. I mean, animals have varying blood types. They all have a species-specific diet. There's not a lion that says, do you know what? I think I'll have a little side salad with my antelope. Or one that says, I'll have some quinoa and rice today. I won't have any meat.
Some mango salad today.
Yeah, it's not going to happen. So here's the thing. People they always say, well, one size doesn't fit all. Everybody's different. No, we're not. We're actually not different. There is one food that gives you everything you need and nothing you don't. And that is the fatty meat from ruminant animals. But does everybody need to eat that way? No. It's probably the ideal food, but for everybody on the planet. However, a lot of people can stay healthy straying away from that. It depends on your redox potential, your potential of the body to clear plant toxins. It depends on your history, how sick you are, what you are, what sort of path you have. Now, I always say, yes, there is an ideal diet for humans, and it's the same. But does everybody have the same healing path? No, that's going to be different. Some people are going to get better straight away. Some people are going to have problems. Some people are going to be able to stick to the diet. Some people aren't. All these different variables. That's where we're different. We have a different healing path. But I do think that we do have an ideal diet. I would say it's simple. People say, well, but that can't be the ideal diet. Well, look, any species, surely their ideal diet is something that gives them everything they need and nothing they don't. And that's it. For koalas, it's eucalyptus, For pandas, it's bamboo. It's the same through the whole of the animal kingdom. And for us, it's fatty meat. But are we okay on a few berries in the autumn? Absolutely. Are we okay with donuts and pizza and pasta every day? No. When you're young, quite often people stay healthy on it. And then you get sick and you go, well, I hear it so many times, but all my friends are healthier. Why is it just me? Well, I'm sorry, it's happened. You're going to have to change quicker than them. Maybe you've got arthritis and so you're in pain now, but don't worry about it because you can fix that. 10 years down the line, your friend who seems to be fine now and doesn't have arthritis, his first symptom might be death from a heart attack.
His first symptom.
Yeah, first symptom can often be death, or the first symptom that people notice. Obviously, there's many symptoms leading up to that we don't listen to because we get so used to the fact that, oh, we have this ache and pain. Oh, I'm putting on a little bit of weight around the middle. That's natural. I'm getting older.
Or I'm going to see my doctor and happy every day, happy medication pill will solve everything.
Yeah.
I used to have a friend, it's quite funny. Like, that was when I was in my adolescence, when I was like 15, 16, 17. Now, I already thought when she said what I'm going to explain now, like, what the heck? So my friend, he had a grandma and I didn't see her very often, maybe a couple of times. And she was obese. And then she was like, oh, today I can have fries because I took that medication my doctor gave me. I was, and I was like, you are very misinformed, I believe. Like, well, obese because he eats the wrong food. Just because it's going to block the symptoms doesn't mean that you're not going to have any blood clotting or whatever in your system.
Totally. And it's like the people who go,
it's so naive to me. Like, I'm like, it confuses me. It's like, what the hell?
Yeah, it's like people who say, oh, well, I've done some running on a treadmill this morning, covered in EMFs in a blue light environment. And so now I can go and have a few croissants for breakfast because I've burned it off. Nah, it's not how it works.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we talked quite a while, and I think at this point we are good to wrap it up, I suppose. Is there any final message you want to give to the listeners, or are you good?
No, it's just please get your confidence. If you've listened to this and you think this is absolutely mad, so did I at one point. We all did. There is nothing as insane as just eating meat. It's the most dangerous food. It's going to give you cancer and heart disease, so eating it on its own is going to kill you really quick. Well, consider how sick I was when I went into it. And I'm fine now 10 years later. Surely if it was that bad, it would have killed me within a month, right? Because it was the worst food ever. Strangely, though, it's reversed everything. So, yeah, it's absolutely fine. And just, you know, if you want to find out more, just Vincent will put my my details below. Come and join our Facebook groups. I've got an arthritis one if you've got rheumatoid or psoriatic. There's a carnivore one. There's my Substack for all the stuff. And then you'll be on the mailing list for our events. We do live events as well. We've got a great one coming up in August, which is the Ancestral Health Festival. And not only are there some amazing speakers, some of my heroes and great friends speaking there, but we've also got music and all sorts of other stuff. I'll be playing there with the Daz Band and probably a big guitar virtuoso thing on the Sunday night. I think get all my favorite guitarists along to go crazy. We've got the Spain conference, but that's sold out now. That's incredible. That's beautiful. And we're planning another one for March, so get on the mailing list. But I'm amazed that sold out so quickly. It was so good last year. And that's like a big ticket one. That's like 3,300 quid a ticket. And everybody wants to come and stay at this beautiful place. But the Ancestral Health Festival in England, very, very, very reasonable. That you can find out how to book that from my link tree. Yeah, and my course as well, that 30 video online course, that's on there. And all the things I do and events and this and that and Zesty. And yes, everything will be in those links that Vincent will put below. So come and say hello. If you want to consult, please contact me. If you're in real pain with psoriatic arthritis, please come and chat to me. I can honestly get you out of it. No, I can't. I can tell you how to get yourself out of it.
Yeah, how your body can
That's what we do.
Resolve that problem.
That's what we do. Yeah.
All right, Phil, thank you so much for taking your time. And
well, thanks for a good chat. And thanks for some great questions, Vincent. Thank you very much.
Yeah.